All right, hi and welcome. Thanks for joining me today. Today we're going to be talking about gifted behaviors and ways in which we can ensure that our gifted and twice exceptional students can be supported. So stick around if you're interested in learning more about ways in which you can set up an ideal gifted environment. All right, so I'm going to open up my screen share here and just show you this little visual. Maybe some of you are familiar with this, some of you might not be. This is the three rings model presented by Joseph Renzulli. And I'd like to take a moment and sort of explain how this relates to us. You'll notice that there's three clusters in this. There's the above average ability, creativity, and task commitment. Okay, now it's really important to note that this above average ability doesn't necessarily mean schoolhouse gifted, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that a student can only be good at math. Okay, just want to be clear. Someone like a Simone Biles, who probably maybe struggled in the classroom with ADHD, but spoiler alert, showed out in the gymnasium, is someone that would also exhibit above average ability, right? So we want to expand this idea of ability beyond just schoolhouse gifted and think about our multiple intelligences, right? Our nature lover, our athlete, and so on. So when we look at these three rings, it's important that we understand that all three must be present to witness gifted behaviors. Okay, and this is important. Renzulli differentiates between giftedness and gifted behaviors. He prefers to talk about and think about gifted behaviors that can come about at certain times, under certain circumstances, to certain people. Okay, so if we look in the center, we do see this beautiful purplish color, but all three things must be present. So let's unpack those. So yes, a student must have an above average ability, right? And these can be linear. Joseph Renzulli gives the example of math. If a kid does really well in a 5th grade math assessment, odds are they'll probably do quite well in a 7th grade math assessment, right? So the above average ability must be present. However, the two other domains that make the three rings are creativity, which can be defined as students being able to take content, manipulate it, apply it in other settings, think critically about it, unpack it, dissect it, etc. And also task commitment, right? Many of you probably have, I certainly can say this, have had above average moments with creative insight, but not followed through, right? Or really creative ideas, task commitment, but lacking perhaps the ability to do the thing that I thought of. So it's important that when we think about our ideal educational settings, whether those be in the classroom, whether those be virtual or a hybrid model, that we're considering all three of these elements being present. And Renzulli goes on to say that not only must they all be present, but they must all be interacting. Okay, so this is a key element. They must all be interacting. When we create these settings, we need to make sure that our students are thinking critically, that they are thinking creatively, that they are applying their ability, right? Leading with their strength. This is this positive psychology. They're tapping into what it is that grounds them and makes them feel good and lights their fire. And then we bake in the task commitment. This third element is often missing. I'm sure, feel free to leave me a comment, give me a thumbs up if you're with me. So many parents are constantly frustrated because they feel like the executive functioning isn't there, right? Twice exceptional students struggle often with task commitment. However, if you have a student that's obsessed with learning about something, get out of their way, right? A lot of them are going to just learn. They're going to read Wikipedia endlessly and browse forums. They're going to delve into the deep end of the pool without thinking twice. We then need to be able to creatively transfer that into an environment in which they're not only learning, because sometimes that's just passive, but actively creating, producing, manipulating material and sharing it out. Okay, this is the key element that we have to bake in. This is where we witness that intersection, that convergent point with the gifted behavior. I want to share a great quote with you with Joseph Renzulli stated in a presentation when talking about these. He said, educational programs that serve high potential kids need to create creativity, need to create task commitment. Okay, you start to see these rings coming together, and they must be built around a student that has a particular interest. Interest is key. I want to say this again. Interest is key with everything in gifted behaviors. Then we bring all things together with their ability, and we may observe gifted behaviors. Okay, so again, these all must be present. So I'd like you to take a moment, feel free in the chat. Do you know a student, your child, a friend, a student of yours, if you're a teacher, educator, or specialist, yourself, that you can picture maybe in the last several months or so that has demonstrated or exhibited gifted behaviors in using these three rings in this particular framework? Okay, so go ahead and light that chat up and let me know. One other key element that I would like to talk about with you today is this idea of taking this beyond the classroom. Okay, so yes, we need to make sure that we can support our gifted children, that we can bake in creativity, that we can bake in task commitment, but also that we can take this and make it much more broad and much more applicable, tangible, right? If COVID and the distance learning landscape has taught us nothing else, it's to throw away busy work and focus on what really matters, right? If we're getting a student to wrestle with in the domain of their above average ability, let's make this applicable. Let's solve a real world problem. There are plenty of them, right? And it's this kind of applied, meaningful, creative learning that can increase task commitment, okay? I am in an effort to keep this conversation on the shorter side so that I don't go over my 15-minute timer. I'd like to go over to one more Renzulli quote that I'm going to share with you, and then we're going to close out. I hope that this is meaningful for you. Please let me know in the chat if it is. This is a quote from Renzulli when talking about the purpose of gifted ed. He said, "The purpose of gifted education is to increase society's reservoir of persons who will help solve the problems of contemporary civilization." Let me stop right there. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Solving contemporary problems by applying their creativity and above average ability and task commitment. I mean, parents, is there anything more that you would want than your gifted child to use their full ability, creativity, and task commitment to solve the world's problems? I mean, this is what we're here for, right? This is what we want to empower our students to do, right? This is what we're all about. This is what Young Scholars Academy is all about, my enrichment center. Let me go on with Renzulli here. Renzulli says that by becoming producers of knowledge rather than consumers of existing information, these characteristics are in turn important contributors to self-efficacy, the belief that one is capable of and subsequently usually more advanced expressions of creative productivity. So not only are we seeing societal benefits to tapping into and supporting our gifted students, but we're also seeing meaningful personal growth with the development of self-efficacy, right? With the development of our students' whole personality, whole persona, and the whole child. Okay, so I'm going to end our screen share there. And I would like to close out by saying that I hope that this has been a meaningful conversation with you. You can join me every other Tuesday. I'll be here on Going Live, and I'm bringing in some other exciting personalities in the upcoming weeks. So stay tuned for more of that. Additionally, I would like to say, if you haven't already, please head over to youngscholarsacademy.org, youngscholarsacademy.org, and check out our site. We're pivoting into the back to school phase right now, right? Students are going back in days, some weeks. And it's important that we pause and reflect as we bring these three spheres together, these three rings together, and think about what are some of the lessons that we can take from distance learning, and how can we help our students to not just go back to school, but thrive. If you go to youngscholarsacademy.org, you'll see that there's a 5 tips for re-entry resource. You can sign up to our newsletter and you'll be sent that. It's a video series as well as written source. And this is created purely to foster conversations between parents and students, or professionals and students, to help prepare for going back to school this year. So thank you very much. Please stay well and thrive and support your students in those 3 particular domains. Take care. Thank you. And I'll see you in 2 weeks.